Hello, and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Jan Amelie, and today I'll be talking about Series 4, Episode 3, Justice, and that will be with the help of my guest, Aubergine Purple. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello, it's nice to have you back, and of course we start with Lister's space mumps, which, of course, they are gross. I mean, but I mean, they're not really that gross. I mean, because it's so blindingly obviously just Craig with some, I don't know, prosthetic of some kind on the top of his head.
It's a very interesting hat. It's a hat that includes hair.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the idea is, that his hair, is still growing on top of the massive lump or whatever you want to call it. But it's quite a bizarre effect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting, considering that we're still dealing with the with COVID in some places worse than others. You kind of recognize conditions like mumps. They evolve over time. Mumps today, it affects lymph nodes in your throat, not makes something grow on your head. So, it gets out in space and it does its evolution thing, and that's what mumps has become. And so you kind of hope, seeing something like that nothing else does that. Please God, don't.
So to be honest, I must admit, unpleasant though it looks, I would actually rather have that on top of my head than an infection in my throat, because obviously that could affect breathing and stuff. Could be very potentially fatal. So I guess from that perspective,
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, not that I would want a huge, massive lump on the top of my head. God, that would be horrible. But anyway, moving on from the actual infection to what interests me about the rest of the crew's attitude, and of course, Crichton, as Lister points out, is being Florence Nightingale, and it's all very touching because, to be fair, neither Cat nor Rimmer appear to give the slightest monkeys, do they?
Yeah, Rimmer's still intangible, so there's not too much he can do on his own. But the cat has always been apathetic to everyone else. So at least for the cat, he is 100% in character and just not wanting to engage and avoiding at all costs because, Lister looks bad.
Yeah,
But
I
Rimmer,
agree. Obviously, it clearly is gross. It's just I guess kind of it's when Lister says that he's been ill for three weeks and neither of them have visited. I'm like, come on. I know it says that. I know Crichton says that Rimmer's been on holiday in the Diesel Decks, but apparently that's a 10-day holiday, so he hasn't been away the whole time. So it's kind of, eyebrow raising, although I suppose to be entirely fair to Rimmer, Crichton does say that Rimmer was intending to visit and show Lister his holiday slides.
there's also the fact that the last time Rimmer did show any care about Lister's health, Crichton wasn't there yet. That was back in parallel dimension. So parallel universe, yeah. I'm getting confused with dimension jump now.
Well, it is confusing. It's the same.
It's coming up, but but still, even though he's intangible, Rimmer was actually kind of genuinely concerned about whether or not Lister was pregnant. But now with Crichton there, he doesn't technically have to care.
Yeah, now you mention it, that is actually a very good point. Now that Crichton is around, he can sort of get away with shrugging it off, because he knows Crichton will take care of Lister no matter what, because that's what Crichton's like, not only is in his programming, but he loves Lister in a way, loves in a platonic fashion, although you could argue that, frankly, but yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is definitely Crichton's presence is definitely the reason, because otherwise, Rimmer probably would be hanging around being incredibly irritating and mother henish because he wouldn't have any choice, because cat is cat, So yeah, quite yeah, I mean, Crichton's presence as a regular changes a lot
Of
of things
course,
for many people, but I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. He definitely takes the heat off Rimmer in terms of showing any concern for Lister at all.
of course. I mean, Cat is very much showing he's a tomcat in his apathy towards others, because if he were raised around people, um, cats that are tend to be very caring when their people are sick. I used to have one cat growing up that when anyone who was sick, even before we knew it, she was just kind of glued to your side, and you were kind of wondering like, what's wrong? What's wrong with me?
That's so cute. I mean, I used to have a cat, and to be honest, I don't remember her doing that particularly. But I mean, that is probably because when we were ill, we probably tried to keep away from her. So maybe that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it does depend on the cat. Yeah,
that
definitely.
too, very much. Some cats just aren't like that, and some just are very needy.
It is true. I mean, our cat actually became well. We shouldn't get off topic, but our cat actually became needier as she got older and was a lot more inclined to just jump on your lap and be clingy. So we'd probably better get back on topic, I guess.
Well, no, actually, that kind of goes on topic for Cat, as we see in the series. Like, we're currently at a point where he's still pretty apathetic, but later on in the series, he gets closer and closer and hangs around more and more often. So, I
Yeah,
mean, it's
you
kind
are
of
you
kind of the
are
same principle with our cat. We're just still in that early stages of apathy.
actually. I mean, again, just briefly, I actually thought, and out of all episodes, I've just had a thought. Tika Ride, which you wouldn't think, which isn't what you would call a fluffy episode at all. When Kat and Lister find out that they have unintentionally committed cannibalism, Kat is absolutely revolted, and technically he shouldn't be because he is not technically human, but clearly he has come to think of himself as akin to human because otherwise he wouldn't be disgusted, would he?
Yeah, yeah. Whereas
And
I don't think he would feel that way right now in the series.
yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yes, I never thought about before, but I mean, thinking doing it for this podcast, has made me think of a lot of things about various episodes, and which I'd never thought of before. Right?
That's
Yes.
fair.
Mhm. Yeah, so Rimmer's holiday, Rimmer intending to visit and show Lister's holiday slides. I mean, that is that is so very Rimmer because I mean, obviously Lister would absolutely hate that, but Rimmer apart doesn't seem to be aware of this, So in his own way, Rimmer would have been trying to be kind, but he just, he wouldn't have realised, that he's actually torturing Lister as he ends up torturing poor Price later on.
And another of the various signs that Rimmer exhibits of autism.
I did think that, to be honest with you. I never used to think that, but that's because I wasn't really aware of the symptoms of autism. But yeah, I mean, that is a pretty from what I understand, I mean, I am not autistic, but from what I know
I
about,
I
yeah,
am. So yeah, I know these moments, and when you're younger, or you just and no one tells you that you're autistic, or anything, um you don't recognize that you're doing that kind of thing until you know that that's a thing autistic people do, and then you see yourself doing it, and you're like, okay, okay, I'm not intending to annoy you with my hyperfixation, but can I annoy you with my hyperfixation?
yeah. I mean, at least this shows, that society has progressed. Because I mean, to be honest, I had when I was growing up, I had not heard of autism. I did. Basically, the all I knew, was I sort of picked up, that there were some people who were considered slightly odd in whatever way. And nowadays, of course, we would say neurodivergent, but those words were just not used at all. And it just wasn't understood. At all. So I mean, at least societies. sort of progressing. It's crawling towards progression in some ways because people are more aware of these issues, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, there is definitely a lot of sort of canon reasons to consider that Rimmer could well be autistic
Or neurodivergent in some other way.
in
Yeah.
some other way. I mean, yeah. I did also want to when they're talking about Barbara Bellini's pot, Cat being, I don't know. I mean, I know Cat is Cat, and he's always very cocky and confident, but I think this is probably the most macho we ever see him, sort of going on about pelvic thrust and stuff. I mean, it kind of
Yeah.
jarred a bit.
Yeah. I also kind of felt that the conversation really was more of their opinions of how hypothetical women would think of them, less than about the said hypothetical woman in question. They're going on and on about themselves and how they're seen, or how they assume they're seen, regardless of any actual woman's input to say
True, yeah.
otherwise.
I mean, and to be honest, whenever every time listeners say that they're going about, well, maybe she's perfectly normal, who doesn't go for your type, etc. I also mentally add, maybe she's gay.
Right? Right?
Why are you assuming this woman is interested in men at all?
Exactly. Uh, which, I mean, and Lister even mentioning that they might not even be into your type, until he says,
Maybe
anything about
come to me.
himself, it kind of does come off of, I mean, what if she's gay? But
I guess he could have been thinking that mentally. But he just kind of spoil it by saying, "Well, maybe she's into me," But he could,
yeah,
if we're going
exactly.
to be charitable, maybe he was thinking about that. I mean,
But it feels like Rimmer would be the one that would bring up, they're going to probably be gay because obviously they wouldn't be into me, sort of thing.
but yeah, honestly,
Which,
yes. Now you mention it, Rimmer should have been there, to be all sort of self pitying about it, frankly, and say something like that. Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do. Also, I did want to say I do like the fact that um, after initially talking to Crichton about Barbara Bellini, what about the pot? Lister then goes into another room, and Holly does get to deliver some of the Barbara Bellini exposition. And
And
you sort of mentally see, I mean, it's like the writer sort of mentally realised, hold on, we should probably give Holly some lines, and did so.
that's probably it, yeah. And then, of course, the introduction of simulants.
Oh yes, I mean, which I did want. I mean, it's good the way Crichton kind of pretty much sums them up in a sentence. The difference between simulants and androids is that simulants are hate humans and would kill them at the drop of a hat, basically.
Yeah, and then they made the simulants look like Borg.
But yeah, I suppose they do. I mean, I have to admit, I mean, I'm one of those kind of Philistines who has never really watched Star Trek, but even I do know what the Borg look like. So I mean, you're right.
Of course, I think that the similarities to the Borg is coincidental, because the Borg hadn't actually been introduced in Star Trek yet.
Oh right, yeah. I mean, because I don't think we can probably sort of flatter ourselves that Star Trek sort of ripped off Red Dwarf in that respect, because I don't think that's very likely. Although apparently there is an episode of Star Trek, one of the various spin-offs, that is very similar plot-wise to Thanks for the Memory. I understand, but not being a Star Trek person, I wouldn't know.
Oh, no, wait, I'm wrong. The Borg were introduced in 89. This
Oh
episode
right.
was from 91.
Oh yeah. This episode was recorded in 1990, and I think aired in 1991, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
So
So
the
maybe
similarity was clearly there and intentional.
it probably was an intentional homage. I mean, given that they mentioned Star Trek by name in Red Dwarf, I mean, it probably was intentional. Yeah. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, yeah. I also did want to mention, when Lister says to cats, I think you're a bit cocky for someone who's never actually met a real woman. I mean, that is a massive continuity error. I mean, Cat met loads of women in Stasis Sleep for a start. I know he
That
didn't.
is true, yeah.
I mean, I know he didn't really talk to them, but I mean, he did meet them. He was around them. I suppose you could.
Of course, up to that point, he'd never met a woman before except for a bunch of skeletons. So maybe he didn't think they were women because no one ever said that's a woman. But he
No.
knows before seeing whoever's supposed to be in the pod, that's supposed to be a woman. So maybe he doesn't have a conscious idea of what a female human looks like, because the only ones he's really probably ever known for sure that we know of is a cartoon.
Oh, I suppose, come to think of it, he did meet Deb Lister in Parallel Universe, but maybe he didn't count her because she's
The
female.
female version of Lister, probably. Same
Of
with
course,
with Arlene.
yeah, and of course, in Better Than Life, he had a fantasy version of Marilyn Monroe, but that doesn't really count because they were in a game, it was a fantasy and stuff. So
True.
I don't know.
But it could also just be a continuity error. The series is
I
rife
mean,
with
let's
them.
face it, it is a continuity error, but I mean, I guess you could make it make sense by saying that Cat's idea of a human woman is someone who looks like Marilyn Monroe or Wilma Flintstone or something.
Yeah, probably.
Since the women in Stasis Sleep, were just ordinary women, not sort of cartoon characters or sex goddesses, and maybe yeah, you could look at it that way, I suppose. But basically, yes, it's a continuity error.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. Moving on to this priceless scene where Rimmer is unintentionally torturing poor Crichton with his holiday slides. That is just the expression on Crichton's face. It's hilarious.
It is hilarious, and it honestly, I feel like it ties into the defense that Crichton gives him. It's kind of like his defense later in the episode is payback for this because he lays that on so thick. And I know we'll get to that later, but it really feels like that's going to be payback.
Sorry, I don't. I mean, I don't quite follow. Do you mean you think that? I get it. You mean you think Crichton is his own back on Rimmer for subjecting him to that. When he goes into
Yes.
his big.
Yes.
I hadn't thought of
Everything about the defense that Crichton does for Rimmer feels like payback for the torture of that slideshow.
that is a really good point, which just hadn't occurred to me. But I'm taking that on board. Definitely, that is a great interpretation. I don't mean it completely makes sense, because God, yeah, and Rimmer's holiday hiking outfit, God, shorts and the lederhosen or whatever the heck they are. I mean, and the expression on his face, it's just
I honestly can't help but think they just were like, Chris, do something silly. And that's what he came up with. It feels like he just was like, we're just going to do something random for this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at least clearly Rimmer had a good time, even if nobody else did.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, moving on to when they're in Starburg and Lister's head bursts. God, that is gross.
And yet the cat is later wearing the same outfit.
I was going to say,
and it looks pristine. Like, where did you get the dry cleaners done?
I mean, I was going
Starbucks.
And also, presumably, both the cat and Lister must have had a shower because they're both clean when this. I mean, there's no suggestion that they went back to Red Dwarf. I mean, they're still on Starbuck. So I find it really hard to believe that Starbuck would have sufficient shower facilities to satisfy cats. To get all that crap off him. I mean, I really do.
He does complain. I mean, in later, series, they get stuck living on Starbug. So, he has to deal with the cleaning facilities there. But it doesn't seem like he would want to.
Yeah, I mean,
if he didn't have to.
to be fair to Cat, if something like that happened to me, I would be like, shower, shower
Yeah,
is instant. And
exactly.
frankly, go to the nearest doctor and be treated for possible infection and stuff, because that is gross. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
basically, um, Rob and Doug, they wanted clean access, so they just put in a scene cut and didn't bother to explain it. That's what it is.
Right. Of course, then there has to be the, I can't I it's the silliest thing, but I can never help but wonder, what did they make the fake pus out of?
Oh, I believe they said in the documentary, or Craig may have said in the commentary or something, that it was sort of, kind of trifly kind of substance, which makes sense. It's got sort of yellow bits and stuff. Trifle is, nothing gross about trifle, which helps me find it less gross. I think it's basically some kind of trifly substance. Oh, so
Trifle. Sounds
probably edible.
like pudding.
Yeah, but trifle is oh yeah. Do you know what trifle is? It's probably a very British thing, but it's
It is a
kind of
British thing. We don't have trifle over here.
it's kind of hard to explain. It's sort of jelly and cream and that kind of thing, But it's edible. It's edible. It's quite nice, So that helps me find it.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that is what it was. It obviously
Yeah, for us Jello, there's the cream type and then there's the watery type. So,
Mhm.
it sounds like, could be like vanilla Jello with food coloring in it.
Yes,
Or pudding.
that would make sense. Some kind of vanilla kind of trifly thing.
Yeah.
It does look really gross, and Cat's reaction, frankly, would have been my reaction too. Shoot
Oh
me in the
God, yeah.
head.
Cat had the accurate reaction. I mean, Lister did too. I mean, he's now, literally got a load off his head. And so you can't blame him for being so happy that it's done and over with.
Yeah, I don't blame either of them. Both of their reactions are completely understandable, frankly. Yeah. Right. Okay. So moving on to Justice World itself, which is a very good set. Apparently they filmed it at some place called Sunbury Pump House. Some kind of,
Hmm.
well, obviously a pump house. It looks really good and impressive.
It kind of it's kind of reminiscent to me of Alien 3.
Oh, yeah.
The prison world, that was all kind of the same thing, which, I mean, granted, that movie came out the year after this episode came out, but at that point we also probably seen other similar prison setups in media that were kind of the same way.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think the concept, of prison where you literally any crime you commit it with bounds on you. I don't think it was original to this episode, but it is such a wonderful concept that I'm glad they chose to explore it.
Yeah. And it is an interesting concept enough that they even um, made a reference to it in a later episode in series 11, episode. I wrote this down. Give me a sec. Episode 2, Samsara.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it is an interesting concept. The only thing that kind of is faulty, the whole, you can't do any crime and anything you do happens to you, is the physics of such. Like, there's no explanation to the physics of how that works. Lister tries to light a fire, he is lit on fire. How does that work?
I mean,
He's
I don't know. Obviously, it's just one of those kind of things you have to accept, But yeah,
Yeah, you got to suspend. You have to have that suspension of disbelief to make it work. But it's just it still always sits on my mind. Like, how does the physics work?
I have to say up front. The fact that every time you go into that justice zone, justice computer informs you of that fact. It's unfortunate because it does so later in the episode. It makes everyone look really stupid that they don't get it. It takes so long to get it. I mean, even when Lister's fighting the symbiote, he still doesn't immediately get what the hell's going on. Even after he's had the conversation with Rimmer and so on. It just kind of
Well, that felt like, because like they're still running away from the simulant as the system is letting them know they've entered the justice zone. It feels like Lister does take a slow time to recognize what's going on, but once he does, he just lets it happen.
I mean, obviously, I
Um,
understand. The fact that they're scared and running for their lives means that it could have momentarily slipped their minds. I get that. It's
or
just
they didn't pay attention to what the voice was saying. But at the very end, Lister's very clearly understood that's what's going on. Everything he does to me is going to happen to him. And then Kat's coming up behind him with the shovel, and he's trying to get Kat not to do it.
Don't do it. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the sort of the mind probe scene, and followed by where they discuss how do you define criminal behaviour. That is such an excellent example of misdirection, because everything is leading to it being Lister who's going to be the one that the computer's going to decide is guilty, and then of course they all get released except Rimmer. Then the close up of Rimmer looking incredibly smug, and you just know.
And the way his face falls as he's told he's guilty.
Yeah, it's just hilarious, and I have to say, actually, this is series 4. It may, I think, have been the first series I watched. Because as it actually aired back in sort of 1991. I hadn't seen the earliest. I don't think I've seen the earliest series then, because well, I was still at school. I was not in charge of the TV remote, so I mean, I just watched whatever happened to be on TV. But I have a very strong memory of watching this episode, and and it kind of frankly establishing Lister as my favourite, because I really liked what it showed about his character, because I mean, we learn here that he is technically a petty criminal, but then later on find out, that he will not shoot the simulant in the back with his own arm, because that is just not him. He does have a strong moral code, and it just it really sort of struck me, and it established him as my favourite.
Well, and it also came off to me that both situations, both the conversation before their verdicts from the mind probe, as well as the later conflict between Lister and Rimmer on shooting an unarmed simulant, even knowing that this, simulant wants to kill you, whether or not it's armed, really also seems to reflect how they were raised. Lister was raised in an environment that taught him morality in a way that was like, yeah, sure, this is wrong, but also we need to survive. And Rimmer was raised in this is how the world works. Everything is black and white. There is no gray. And if you think there is, you're wrong.
That is true, yeah.
Survival of the fittest as well. And so that also seems to come off in both situations to me. And it's a very stark contrast, because it is, just typically you see those kinds of situations as opposites. When they're just really different flavors of whatever.
I mean, of course, Lister is working class and Rimmer is middle class. I mean, becomes. I mean, if you could tell from Rimmer's sort of way of speaking and so on, becomes very obvious when in Dimension Jump when we see that's brought up and so on. So there is an obvious difference there. And when Rimmer says that he's never so much as returned a library book late, he is technically very law abiding. I mean, of course, we know that he is prepared to sort of cheat on his exams and stuff. So there is that, but technically, he is law abiding, unless he's trying to get ahead in the space corps.
Yeah, Rimmer always seems to me to flip flop between lawful neutral and lawful evil.
Yeah. I mean, of course, bearing in mind, I don't. Of course, yes, technically he is responsible for the accident, but I don't personally consider him responsible for the accident because he should not have been given that job in the first place. So
Precisely.
yeah. Even though
That's where you have the conversation of actual culpability. Like, just because you do something that causes a cascade effect of something like over 1,000 people dying, which is a change in the number of people on the ship first time. Um, that number got changed from the 100 and some before.
yeah.
But it's, should you have even been given that responsibility or put in that position to make that decision or do that job that caused this cascading effect? So I mean, you're just really more of, are you the first what are those things called? Domino. Are you the first domino, or are you just one in a succession of events leading to the outcome?
It's interesting, frankly, because we never find out in the show who actually asked Rimmer to do it. People have explored various theories in fan fiction.
Myself included.
Yeah, yeah, like maybe it was Hollister because in series 8 Hollister was revealed to be incompetent and not knowing what he was doing, or maybe it was some random person who thought it was funny, to assign Rimmer to a job that he was clearly not able to do. But
Or it was a computer accident.
or it could have been, yes.
Considering that in the books and in Infinity Welcomes Careful Drivers, no one is
No
responsible
was responsible
for
for
the
this.
accident. It just is a malfunction that happens and everyone dies while Lister's
Yeah,
in stasis. So, you know, there is various fan theories on what it is, and I don't think we're ever going to get an answer because I don't
yeah.
think they ever thought about giving us an answer.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it is. I mean, I know Red Dwarf is plot hole central, and we accept that, but it is one of the most gaping, massive plot holes.
Yeah.
Nobody with any common sense would have assigned that job to Rimmer because it was clearly way beyond his capabilities.
And I know it's a minor thing, but the number of years that the computer says he has to serve based off of the setup, there were 1,169 people on board, and we've added 1,000 people to the ship's roster, and he serves 8 years for each count of murder. The math is wrong.
Oh yeah,
It
I
says
mean, I
something
think
about 9,328 years, and it should be 9,352.
oh right, yeah. I think I read something about that. I mean, I never bothered to do the maths myself, but yeah. I mean, it's weird. I mean, you
Uh,
think you think Rob and Doug would have had access to a calculator? They did exist in 1990.
right?
They definitely existed. I can assure you. Thought they would have
But
needed.
it, at the same time, it kind of also makes you wonder: is it also a um, little sign that maybe the computer is willing to recognize being wrong at something because it got that wrong?
Yes, that could be it. Yeah, I mean, now you mention it. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah, but yeah,
It's not. We've already seen Crichton be wrong about things, and so it's only logical that perhaps this could just be one of those situations in which a computer is wrong and it will admit it.
I mean, of course, yes. I mean, I mean, oh, by the way, the actor. I do want to say that the actor who does computer voices is very good, very very excellent sort of air of authority.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. If that guy doesn't get roles regularly, that is like Judge and such, they're not utilizing him well.
Must admit I haven't checked his IMDb, but I imagine that's probably the kind of role he plays, because he's got a very excellent sort of air of gravitas and authority, which is obviously what you want for that role. So yeah.
Oh yeah, it's perfect.
Right. Okay. Let me see. Yeah. So I guess we are progressing to the yeah. Well, of course, we get a scene where Lister visits Rimmer in prison. You know, hi, killer.
Yeah,
always
that
makes you giggle.
the only thing that I really, other than the physics of how the justice field works that came up in that scene. The other thing is I can't help but feel like these prison outfits look like pajamas.
I guess they're kind of meant. Maybe they're kind of meant to, but because the kind of the implication is, that you're a prisoner, you have no occasion to do anything, or go outside, or you don't have your liberty, so we won't even give you proper clothes. I mean, I guess that's the kind
Yeah,
of thing behind it, isn't it? Yeah.
but a set of pajamas with a hat also just seems a little ridiculous.
I mean, of course, I guess it's meant to be ridiculous. I mean, the whole point is to sort of,
True.
yeah. I mean, the lilac jumpsuits in Series 8, although they're not quite as hideous. I mean, at least they're a nice colour, but still. Right. Okay. So we are moving on to the courtroom scene, which is great. I mean, of course, it's a ideal opportunity for Crichton to have a long monologue about what a monumental loser Rimmer is.
Which is, as I put it the other day, is this becomes an episode in which Crichton tries being a lawyer.
Yes, and to be fair, he makes a reasonable stab at it. I mean, he does.
He did a very good job, yeah.
Mhm.
And then, like I said earlier, no, this also comes off because those insults are laid on very thick. This is for all the times in which the series up to this point has insulted Rimmer and everyone's piling on him. This tops it all. And I think really this tops all of that for the entire series. I don't remember any other scenes similar to this. Even the upcoming episode, Simoon, even in that one, there still was not this piling on of insults towards Rimmer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it does kind of go on a little too much, but it's still also, as you go, that's when it starts to feel like this is revenge. Crichton's getting back at him for those damn
Yeah. And
slides.
of course, it is good kind of sort of character continuity with what has happened earlier in the series, i.e. Camille, where Crichton has sort of successfully managed to break his programming to some extent. He's learnt to lie. And of course. Crichton does say, in this episode, boy, I'm really getting the hang of lie mode. That was totally convincing, wasn't it? So clearly,
There's that, and so yeah, this also could come off as an opportunity for Crichton to justifiably insult Rimmer as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you really, I mean, you can't blame Crichton at all, because I mean, we there are still instances, instances throughout the show, but I mean, also instances in this particular series.
Yeah.
Rimmer talks to him as though he's, a thing, not worth considering, etc. I mean, so frankly, Rimmer does deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of, with Rimmer. If Rimmer was just a little bit posher, it would be kind of like he was looking down on the servants. But I don't think he's quite that posh. I mean, I know his family had a gardener. I mean, obviously we know that because said gardener is actually his dad. But I don't really get the impression that his parents were quite posh and rich enough to actually have servants. I mean, perhaps I'm wrong, but
His mother, the few times we see her or hear about her in the series, she doesn't come off as a woman who would do her own cooking, though. I
no,
feel like if they had any servants, it would have been a cook.
Yeah, they
but
may have had.
it
They
kind
may
of feels like the sum total of servants. They employ a gardener that comes around. He's probably doesn't work on just their place. He probably works around the neighborhood, but they probably have a chef that's just for them.
Oh, you mentioned it. Yeah, she doesn't come across as someone who would do her own cooking at all. So yeah, I mean, perhaps they had a cook. I mean, maybe maybe they didn't have live-in servants, but I mean, they probably do it and did have but possibly they might have had a maid or cleaner who came in sometimes. But I mean, I can't imagine them having sort of um, servants that actually lived on the premises. I mean, no, I don't.
Oh yeah.
I'm kind of basically sort of basing this on the British class system, and they are clearly middle class, but I don't think they would quite have been that wealthy. But I mean, I could be entirely wrong here. This is just me going on the British class system, But yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
they probably had servants who were part time who came in, But I imagine they probably didn't have living servants. But anyway, the reason I'm going on about this is obviously, it kind of informs Rimmer's attitude towards Crichton a bit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Mm. Oh, I do also want to say, of course, there is also a really, really nice little moment when Crichton calls Lister as a witness, and name Dave
I
Lister, occupation bum.
the pause there, the fact that Lister had to think about that, I honestly feel like is the comedic gold
Yeah,
right
I,
there,
I, I was
because
going to say,
it was the
I love.
perfect amount of time to think. He had the facial expressions going as he was thinking about it before he was just like, boom.
Yeah, I mean, basically you said what I was about to say. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say, I mean, his acting there is great. I mean, perfect pause, perfect expressions. I mean, it's great. And then of course we do get this very interesting description of how Lister currently views his relationship with Rimmer. And bear in mind, this is probably influenced somewhat by the fact that he's just spent 3 weeks in sickbay and hasn't been visited by said person at all. Would you describe the accused as a friend? No, I describe the accused as a git. And of course,
Yeah.
then of
But then
course,
you have that little shippy moment.
yeah, followed up by
Who thinks of Rimmer most fondly? Like, why is that how you would phrase it? And Lister still says he does, and he smiles. And Rimmer, of course, is just got this angry, confused face. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
I mean, it is absolutely true. I mean, at this stage of the show, I mean, to be honest, probably every stage of the show, the person who thinks of him most funny is definitely Lister. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that he thinks of him funny at all. It's just he is the one who is most empathetic towards him because he is a nice person, and Cat is Cat, and Crichton obviously Lister is Crichton's favourite person. So I mean, who else is there really?
Yeah, but it feels like, people don't always like everyone else 100% of the time. And it kind of feels like while Lister doesn't like Rimmer much of the time, he does still recognize that he does like Rimmer.
Mhm. Yeah, I
He
mean,
just never says it.
it is true. Yeah, yeah, well, obviously, of course, we would think this since we do both ship them. But um,
Well, that, and also, I mean, the series kind of, displays that. Like, why else would he, do things like stand up for Rimmer here? Um, why would he want to go after him and save him when, he needs saving later on? That entire speech in, the Promised Land. I mean, there's various moments in the series that show that Lister does like Rimmer. He just isn't brave enough to deal with how Kat and Crichton would react if he were to say it.
It's true. I mean, basically, what I'm doing is, trying to. I mean, I think even though obviously I do look at them through shipping goggles. I mean, I'm perfectly capable of taking them off, and actually looking at what the show is showing us. And show is not showing us two men that hate each other. I mean, they might have been in the first series, but for after the first series, they are not showing us two men that hate each other. They're showing us
Yeah,
two men that are very different and have a lot of animosity towards each other. I mean, partly because they live together, get in each other's way all the time, But the fact that they are choosing to do that when they could literally never see each other because they live on the ship the size of a city. I mean, there is significance there.
which is why I've heard, and this is based off an American TV series from the '60s. There have been some people who say that the comedy aspects of their relationship and the general characterization of the relationship in the series is reminiscent of The Odd Couple, which is a show about two men, two bachelors, who live together in New York City because they can't afford to live on their own.
Mm.
And they are constantly at odds against one another. One is a slob, the other is very meticulous. There's a lot of very clear references. And I see it, I see those, but there's also a lot of different dynamics because the show, The Odd Couple itself, actively has plots pitting them against each other, where Red Dwarf doesn't always do that. We have plots like this where they're not pitted against each other. It's just, a situation that's focusing on the characters in different ways. We're
Yeah.
learning about Lister's morality. We're learning about Rimmer's guilt. We're learning that Crichton can pick up um, things like being a lawyer in a couple of hours.
Yeah. I mean,
or
yeah.
or barrister. I think barrister is the term for you
Yes, yeah,
guys.
good. Oh, well, we say lawyer and barrister. I'm not sure if they're
Okay.
exactly the same thing, but we do say both.
Because you also have solicitors too.
Have solicitor as well. I mean, I think they
And
are
I
slightly.
think over here it's just lawyer for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think solicitor might have something to do with the kind of case they handle, or something. But yeah, I mean, the point is definitely, as you say, Crichton is Crichton was a great introduction for Rob and Doug, because he's an endless sort of pit of knowledge that he can acquire. I mean, of course, obviously, you could say that so is Holly, but Holly is not mobile. Holly can't sort of go around with them as much. So there's that.
And Holly's also a lot more, there's the senility that they've added to the character. So I mean, sure, they have things like to this episode where Holly actually had a really good idea. They can play it off as the whole, even a broken clock's right twice a day sort of thing.
Exactly.
Holly's
Yeah.
still very senile, which we see in the next
I mean,
episode,
I
especially.
definitely. When we get to Whitehall, I definitely want to talk about that at length because I mean, it is quite a marked contrast, between
Yeah.
Holly seeming pretty articulate and with it in this episode and coming up with a decent plan, and then the next episode, she's apparently had a serious but well, we will get to that. I mean, they do have a line
Yeah.
which kind of explains it, about an iron storm having affected her and so on. So we'll get to that when we get to Whitehall. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I do like that in this episode she comes up with a decent solution. It does work. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not her fault. That the justice computer convicts Rimmer. I mean, how she could really have foreseen that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, as we were saying about Lister, the bit this little bit where Lister says what he thinks of Rimmer at this stage. It's such a lovely little encapsulation of their relationship at this stage of the show. It's very very nicely done.
Yeah. It moments like these happen at least once every series. Um I think really after the first one, like there's really not a moment I can think of like this in series 1, but another similar moment to this is in Me Too. the whole, turning off the other hologram and everything, and trying to, yeah, sure. There's also that underlying reason why he wants to know about gazpacho soup in that one. But that's another pivotal moment that's very similar to this, and
Mhm.
he shows he truly does care, and yeah, it's nice that that's a consistent theme that comes up throughout the series.
Yeah, definitely agree. Okay, so moving on to, I mean, it's very neat the way, the trial distracts us, and we not only do we completely forget about the simulant, the characters forget about the simulant until they come back into Starburg, and there the simulant suddenly is.
I mean, granted, the first time I watched the episode, I actually did forget about the simulant until it came back
I kind
up.
of often forget about the similars. It's kind of odd, because I get so caught up in the courtroom bit, and the Lister and Rimmer relationship bit. You do and Crichton having a wonderful takedown of Rimmer. I do kind of forget about it, and then oh yeah, the simulant.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where the episode felt like it had a plot A and a plot B, but plot B is the reason for plot A.
Exactly, and to be fair, I mean, the simulant is thematically relevant, because we do
Yeah.
we do get to the yeah. Oh, I did want to say, I do love. I mean, the last we see of Holly in the episode is her quickly ducking out the sight when the simulant shoots her screen. That's neat.
And only for a very short moment do you notice that the screen is not damaged
Oh,
in all the smoke.
oh yeah, I guess it must have been a special, very strong reinforced screen, which is impervious to bazooka fire, or alternatively, it's a plot hole.
I mean, there's also the fact that the simulant may not register that he's just shooting blanks at the moment.
I suppose. I mean, he may be, being a simulant, he's just enjoying the violence and shooting anything for the sake of it. I mean, we see that because he shoots at the escort boots.
Yeah, exactly. So it might just be the violence,
Right.
scaring
Yeah.
people,
Uh-huh.
being a general menace.
Yep, that is obviously what simulants we find out in the novels were created for. To be perfect killing machines, which and of course, human beings being stupid were stupid enough to create them. But anyway, I do hologram is telling me that we're over 50 minutes, so but I do want to um discuss the scene between Lister and Rimmer, where they argue about shooting the simulant when they think he's unarmed. I mean, obviously he is armed, but they think he's not armed, and it's such a
Yeah.
lovely encapsulation of both their characters. I mean, Lister, okay, he is a petty criminal, but he's not going to shoot somebody in the back. That is not him. He just can't do it. And that is so neat. So I find appealing of him. As I said, it made quite an impression on me when I first watched it. It was what attracted me. Well, one of the things that attracted me to his character. I mean, there were other scenes, but yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
by the way, don't know whether you happen to. It's a very British expression. Do you know what Rimmer means when he says, "I could happily shoot him if he was on the job"?
Um
I did.
I'm not sure if the phrase has a different meaning in the UK than it does in the US.
Well, basically, it's informal for having sex.
Oh, yeah, no, we mean it like literally when
Yeah,
we say it over here. It's not a euphemism.
yeah.
Um
I must say, it's not an
damn.
expression that I
That does put a different spin on the that does put a completely different spin on that now.
yes,
Looking back.
that's why. That's why.
Cuz
That's
I'm
why
just I'm just thinking, the way we say it when we say on the job, we mean like literally, in the act of doing
yeah.
something not sexual.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, that's why the audience go, ugh.
Ah, yes. Now it makes sense.
I mean, I must say it is not a particularly common British expression. It's not one that I personally use or have ever heard anyone else use. But the internet assures me that it is an informal British expression for having sex. So I assume that is how Rob and Doug meant it. Oh, I do also want to say, I mean, yeah, Lister is idealistic and will not shoot anyone in the back, but he's not so idealistic that he's stupid enough to go and meet the stimulant without hiding a weapon on him. Which I like.
Yeah,
Yes.
another thing I noticed while you just told me about that British um phrasing.
Sorry if I've traumatized you with that image.
No, you haven't. It's just the fact that you pointing that out. There's also the fact that this episode has probably some of the most American references in the series thus far. Um, and as an American, I can tell you they don't hit quite right. It's very clear they were kind of shoehorned in, and the cast commentary they even mentioned that these American references were shoehorned in specifically because they found out the series was starting to get popular in the
America,
U.S.
yeah. I mean, they were quite, honest about it. I mean, obviously that's why. Well, I think it's partly why Marilyn Monroe features so much, but I think also it's because that Rob and Doug find her attractive. So I mean, fair enough. But yeah, and
Yeah,
also of course,
it's interesting at least.
Elvis in a later episode and various other sort of US kind of references, and Cat saying "take the fifth." I mean, you could
That one especially, like that one actually was the only American thing that hit accurately.
Well, I mean, I'm glad it hit accurately. I mean, of course, Cat is not American, but yeah, I mean, he's watched the Flintstones, and presumably he's watched other US media. So I guess you can, you can headcanon that he picked it up from some US media that he was watching. So I mean, fair enough.
Probably still doesn't know what it means, but probably just knows it means, hey, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm sure Cat has got no idea what the Fifth Amendment is about, but he knows it's something you can say. You can say in this situation. So why not say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Oh yes, I mean, okay. So I mean, I do. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, I do like that we visibly see Lister um get. Oh, we're in the justice zone. Anything he tries to do to me is going to rebound on him, and basically, literally making the simulant kill himself. I mean, it is a very neat way to get rid of the simulant.
Yeah. It is. And then you see at the end of the episode, which very weird ending, clearly.
Yeah.
Lister having shown us his morality is more lawful. He seems to have really felt like he learned something from what happened, and the rest of them are just like we don't care. We're just glad we survived.
Yeah, I mean, it is, what you call a sort of cold ending, but I mean, it's kind of in character for Red Dwarf, and I think basically what it was is writers, they're not they wanted to undercut the kind of ending you get sometimes in TV where you end with right. The moral of the story is hammer it home with sledgehammer. They're like, no, we are not that kind of show. We are just going to have Lister fall down a manhole.
Yep. Basically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like it, but I mean, it's how they chose to end it, and let's face it, they've had much worse endings in this show, so it's not something that spoils the episode for me or anything.
Yeah.
The only thing left to do is to rate the episode, both out of 10, both overall and also for slashiness. So how would you rate them?
Overall, this episode comes in at a 6 for me. Not just because it's got, the generalized inconsistencies the series is known for, but it really is a bit more disjointed than other episodes. The thing people remember it most for is the scenes on Justice World before the simulant thing at the end and all that. The courtroom scene especially.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, when only a part of an episode is memorable, but you still have many important aspects to it. It's kind of a little more elevated, but still okay. It was good.
Right. Okay. How would you rate it for slashiness?
I mean, we only really get the one scene, so it's kind of like a 4 or 3 for
Fair enough.
me.
I mean, I agree. Well, basically, I've given it 5, but that is pretty much solely for the scene where who is the person who thinks of most fondly. I do. I mean, that is a really nice little moment, But otherwise,
And the smile. It's very significant that he smiles the way he does and looks at Rimmer when he says it,
I do like that, yeah, which is
Um,
why I've rated it that high. But I mean, it's pretty much the only thing in this episode, unless you count,
yeah.
basically, the whole. I mean, you could argue that pretty much every episode of Red Dwarf has slashiness in it just from the just sort of general atmosphere, But I mean, apart from that, it's really only that particular scene.
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. So like I said, I mean, for slashiness, I'm giving it 5 out of 10, and overall, I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. That may be a tad generous, but um, as I said, it's one of those episodes which was one of the first that I remember seeing. It made a big impression on me, and I like the sort of atmosphere. The sets and the sets and so on, and it's a good episode for Lister. So yeah, I think that's why
Yeah.
why I'm giving it a relatively high score. Right.
That's fair, yeah.
Mhm. Uh-huh. Right. Okay. So and that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Horogomet for much needed on this occasion technical help. And also thank you to my guest, Aubergine Purple.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on Tumblr or on Discord on the post where I'll be linking to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. Next episode we'll be covering, very shortly actually, is the Holly-centric White Hole. And I hope you'll join us then. But for now, goodbye.